Ever get that feeling like the spiritual world's this giant jigsaw puzzle, tons of pieces, but no clear picture? Well, today we're going deep into Vedanta, this whole system of Hindu philosophy that tackles the huge questions, you know, reality, self-liberation. And here's the thing, it doesn't give us just one neat answer. Instead, it's got these three distinct schools of thought: Dvaita, Advaita, and Vishishtadvaita. Each has its own unique take on the universe, on God, and even on how we achieve liberation.
And what's so fascinating is they all come from these same ancient texts, the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita. But get this, they interpret these texts in wildly different ways, leading to some really intriguing debates.
Okay, so let's unpack this, starting with Dvaita. Dvaita means dualism, right? So if I'm getting this right, Dvaita sees God, individual souls, and the material world as totally separate.
Exactly right. Dvaita really emphasizes this eternal difference between them. It's a concept they call panchapeda, which means 5 differences. It's almost like a cosmic dance where each entity plays a specific, unchanging role. Vishnu, the supreme being, is all-powerful, completely independent.
So no chance of merging with the divine in this view, then?
Not exactly. So the souls, or jivatmas, are eternally dependent on God, for sure, but they stay distinct. They journey through these cycles of birth and rebirth, accruing karma on the way. Their ultimate goal, though, liberation. And they get there through devotion to Vishnu, which Dvaita envisions as this eternal service in this amazing divine realm called Vaikuntha.
So it's very devotional path. Your individual identity is key, even in liberation.
That's interesting. Okay, so what about the material world? Is it real in this view?
Oh, absolutely. Totally real. Not an illusion, no, sir. Think of it as the stage where souls, act out their roles, strive for liberation. It's all governed by God's will. It's like a testing ground.
Oh.
Okay, I see. So Dvaita paints this picture of a personal God with distinct souls striving for liberation through devotion. And the material world, very real. It's their proving ground. It's a structured approach, to say the least.
Definitely. Now let's totally switch gears and check out Advaita, which means non-dualism.
Now, this is where things get really, really mind-bending, right? Because Advaita basically says the whole concept of separation is just an illusion.
Precisely. Advaita, spearheaded by the philosopher Adi Shankaracharya, proposes that there's only one reality, Brahman, and that's it. Everything else, the world, even ourselves, all Maya, all an illusion.
Hold on, wait a minute. So everything we experience, all this complexity, all this beauty, it's all just an illusion. How does that even work?
Okay, think of it like you're watching a movie. You get completely absorbed in the story, right? But deep down, you know it's not real life. Advaita says the world's a bit like that. It's a captivating illusion. But our true self, the Atman, isn't separate from Brahman. It is Brahman.
So in Advaita, liberation isn't about going to some heavenly realm, but about realizing this oneness with Brahman.
Exactly. It's about waking up from the dream of individuality, and merging back into that ocean of pure consciousness. Liberation here is about shedding that illusion of separateness.
Wow, that's a huge shift in perspective.
Right.
No wonder Advaita is considered so groundbreaking, and it totally flips our understanding of reality on its head. So how do you even begin to grasp this idea of oneness?
Well, Advaita uses a process called neti, which means not this, not this.
Right.
By negating all the things we typically associate with ourselves, our body, our thoughts, our emotions, we finally arrive at that realization of our true self.
So it's a process of elimination. You're peeling back the layers to get to the core truth.
Exactly. It's about getting rid of those limitations we impose on ourselves and revealing our true nature.
Okay. All right. So we've got Dvaita with its emphasis on a personal God and devotion, and Advaita advocating for dissolving the ego and realizing oneness with Brahman. What a contrast, huh?
Now, imagine a school of thought that tries to bridge these seemingly opposite views. That's where Vishishtadvaita, or qualified non-dualism, comes in.
Okay, this sounds intriguing. How does it bridge that gap?
Well, it was developed by the philosopher Ramanuja, and Vishishtadvaita proposes that God, souls, and matter, they're all real. But here's the thing. They're all interconnected. It's like a body and soul, distinct yet unified. Think of it like a tree. God is the roots. The souls are the branches, and matter, well, that's the leaves.
Okay, so not complete oneness like in Advaita, but not complete separateness like in Dvaita.
You got it. It's this middle ground where everything is intertwined, but each still has its own unique reality.
So what's liberation look like in Vishishtadvaita?
It's about recognizing that inherent connection and eternally serving God with love and devotion. It's not about losing your individuality, but about understanding your place in the divine whole.
A fascinating blend, this devotion and interconnectedness. So we have these three distinct schools of thought. Dvaita, focusing on that personal God. Advaita, advocating for the realization of oneness. And Vishishtadvaita, bridging the gap with its unique perspective on interconnectedness. It's amazing how they all stem from the same ancient texts, but offer such diverse interpretations.
It really speaks to the incredible depth and richness of the Vedantic tradition. It's not about finding one right answer, but about exploring the various paths to truth.
I'm totally with you there. You know what this makes me think about? How these different schools actually went about interpreting those ancient verses to support their philosophies. Now that has to be a fascinating rabbit hole to explore.
It really is. It's like these philosophers were playing this cosmic game of interpretation, using the same texts to build their own unique, philosophical structures.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they each had this set of philosophical building blocks, but they arranged them in completely different ways. Let's take a well-known example. The phrase tatvamasi, often translated as "you are that," which is like a cornerstone of Advaita
Well,
Vedanta.
perfect example. For Advaitins, Tatvamasi directly points to the identity of the individual self, the Atman, with that ultimate reality, Brahman. It's this bold statement of oneness, dismantling the illusion of separation between the individual and the divine.
But I bet the other schools have their own spins on this, right?
You bet they do. Vishishtadvaita, with its focus on qualified non-dualism, sees Tatvamasi a little differently. Instead of absolute identity, they interpret it as a relationship of belonging, like a deep interconnectedness.
So more like you are a part of that, emphasizing that inseparable link between the soul and God.
That's it. Think of the relationship between a wave and the ocean. The wave's distinct for sure, but it's inseparable from the ocean, always a part of it.
That makes sense. Now, I'm really curious how Dvaita, with its emphasis on dualism, tackles this. I mean, they can't possibly agree with either interpretation.
You're right about that. Dvaita goes in a completely different direction. They interpret Tatvamasi through the lens of another verse, often cited by Madhvacharya, the founder of Dvaita, Sat Atma Tatvamasi.
Okay, and that means?
That self, you are not. This verse, according to Madhvacharya, makes it super clear that there is this fundamental, this eternal difference between the individual soul and God. They're not the same, not even parts of a whole.
Wow, talk about a stark contrast. So the same phrase, tatvamasi, becomes this battleground for these different schools of thought, each using it to support their own understanding of the relationship between the self and ultimate reality.
A perfect illustration of how different interpretations can come up, even within the same religious tradition. It shows just how dynamic and how evolving philosophical and spiritual inquiry can be.
It's like each school is using these ancient verses as lenses to view the entire universe.
And the beauty is, these lenses, while different, can all offer valuable insights into the nature of reality and the path to liberation.
Speaking of liberation, I'm curious how each school views the very purpose of creation, given their distinct philosophies. Why are we here, and what are we ultimately striving for?
That's a question that lies at the heart of these philosophies. And as you might expect, each school has its own unique answer. Let's start with Advaita. Since they see the world as Maya, an illusion, they see the purpose of creation as this sort of cosmic playground for the soul to realize its true nature.
So it's like this grand cosmic drama designed to help us wake up from that dream of separateness and realize our unity with Brahman.
Precisely. It's all about transcending the illusion, shedding that false sense of self and merging back into the source.
That makes sense in the Advaita framework. What about Vishishtadvaita? How do they understand the purpose of creation with their emphasis on interconnectedness?
Well, for Vishishtadvaita, creation is this magnificent act of divine love. It's a manifestation of God's qualities. And the purpose of life then becomes about recognizing this intimate connection, serving God with love and devotion, and participating in this divine play.
So it's not about escaping the world, but finding our place within it, seeing the divine in everything and everyone.
Exactly. It's about experiencing the joy, the beauty of existence while understanding our eternal relationship with God.
Okay, that's beautiful. And Dvaita, given their emphasis on the eternal distinction between God, souls, and matter, I imagine their take on the purpose of creation is quite different.
You're right. Dvaita sees creation as this eternal realm distinct from God. It's a testing ground where souls gather karma and eventually reach liberation through their actions and devotion.
So in Dvaita, it's about striving for God's grace, By walking that path of righteousness and devotion. It's like a cosmic school where we're learning, we're growing through our experiences.
That's a great analogy. Each school offers a different understanding of creation's purpose. Yet they all point toward liberation, ultimately, even though they define it in their own way.
It's amazing how these philosophies, with such different perspectives, can coexist within the same tradition. It speaks volumes about the depth, the inclusivity of Vedanta.
It really does. It acknowledges that different individuals might resonate with different paths, providing a framework for each to find their own way.
It's like a spiritual buffet, offering all these different dishes to cater to, different tastes and appetites.
I love that. And you know what's even more remarkable?
What's that?
Despite these diverse interpretations, all three schools view their philosophies not as contradictory, but as complementary. They acknowledge that each path, while emphasizing different aspects of truth, ultimately leads towards the same goal.
So it's not about choosing one right path, but finding the one that speaks to your own heart and mind, the one that resonates most deeply.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's what makes the Vedanta so enduring. It embraces the diversity of human experience and provides multiple pathways to spiritual growth and liberation.
It's like a huge, vibrant tapestry, woven with threads of devotion, knowledge, and action. Each strand,
Yeah.
contributing to the beauty and complexity of the whole.
Beautifully put. And, this diversity, it isn't random. There are deep historical, cultural, and philosophical reasons why these different schools came about and flourished within the Vedantic tradition. Want to delve into that a bit?
Absolutely. I'm all ears. Unraveling the historical and cultural context behind these philosophies, that sounds fascinating. It's like peeling back the layers of this complex and intriguing story. Okay, so we've looked at these three distinct schools of thought, right? Dvaita, Advaita, and Vishishtadvaita, each with its own take on God, the self, liberation, and, even the purpose of creation. But why so many different approaches? It's not like someone just woke up one day and said, hey, let's have three philosophies just for fun.
Right. You're right to be curious. The diversity of Vedanta, it's not arbitrary. It reflects, I think, the multifaceted nature of reality itself and of human consciousness. It's like, when you're looking at a diamond, each facet reflects light differently, but they're all part of the same gem.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Right.
So are you saying these different philosophies came about because people experience and approach spirituality in different ways?
Absolutely. I mean, we aren't all wired the same way, are we? Some people are drawn to logic, intellectual inquiry. Others, they're all about emotional connection, devotion. And
Right.
some people, they express it through action, through service.
That's so true. Like, I have friends who love these deep philosophical debates, while others find peace in prayer, in ritual.
Mhm.
And some express their spirituality through acts of kindness, social justice.
Exactly. And Vedanta, in its wisdom, recognizes this beautiful diversity, this diversity in temperament. And it offers a path for everyone. Each one is tailored to a specific way of approaching that spiritual quest.
So Advaita, with its emphasis on self-inquiry and dissolving the ego, that might resonate more with people who are, like, intellectually inclined.
Precisely. It's a path that really invites you to question everything you think you know about yourself, about the world, to dive deep into the nature of reality.
Well, Vishishtadvaita, with its focus on devotion and this loving relationship between the soul and God, might appeal more to people who are driven by heart-centered connection.
Exactly. It's a path of surrender, of experiencing divine love, of recognizing the divine in literally everything and everyone.
And then we have Dvaita, which, with its structured rituals, emphasis on action that might be a good fit for those who are more practically oriented.
You got it. It's a path emphasizing discipline, duty, and the power of right action to gain good karma and move towards liberation.
It really is like a spiritual choose-your-own-adventure, isn't it? But it's not just about personality types, right?
Oh.
Historical and cultural factors, they had to play a role in shaping these schools too, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely. The historical and cultural context is so important to understanding how these philosophies came about. I mean, think about it. Ideas, they don't just exist in a vacuum, right? They're shaped by the conversations, the debates happening all around them.
Okay, I'm ready for that history lesson. Hit me with it.
All right, well, take Advaita, for example. It really gained traction when Buddhism was flourishing in India.
So was it like a philosophical response then to the prevailing Buddhist thought?
It was, in a way, yeah. You see, Advaita, with its focus on non-dualism, it offered this distinct perspective. It both challenged and sort of complemented Buddhist teachings. It added another layer, to the ongoing conversation about the nature of reality.
Fascinating. It's like a philosophical dance, each school responding to and building upon the ideas of its predecessors and contemporaries.
Mm.
What about Vishishtadvaita? What was going on culturally when it emerged?
Well, Vishishtadvaita, it arose alongside the Bhakti movement, a time of intense devotional fervor that was sweeping through India.
So it was a philosophy born out of a surge in religious devotion then.
Exactly. It gave a framework, a philosophical framework for this outpouring of devotion. It emphasized the personal relationship, that personal relationship between the soul and God.
And the Vaita. What historical or cultural forces were at play in its development?
Well, Dvaita came about a bit later. In South India, a region with this long tradition of temple worship, devotional practices, it stressed the importance of ritual, the authority of Scripture, that eternal distinction, between God and the soul.
So it was like a systematization of existing devotional practices,
Yeah.
giving them a philosophical foundation.
Exactly. It provided this intellectual weight, this structure to these deeply ingrained devotional practices, and really solidified their place within that larger Vedantic tradition.
This is incredible. It's like these philosophies, they aren't just these abstract systems of thought, but living responses to the historical, the cultural, the spiritual needs of the people. Products of their time, but still totally relevant today.
And there's another piece of this that I find really, really fascinating. The development of these schools, it wasn't always peaceful, this gradual evolution. It involved some intense philosophical debates, disagreements, even, dare I say, rivalries.
Oh, I knew there had to be some drama.
Yeah.
So there were like philosophical smackdowns. Did they settle their differences with rap battles using like ancient Sanskrit verses?
Well, maybe not rap battles, but they definitely engaged in rigorous debate. Think of it like a huge intellectual tournament, right? Where these great minds of the time, they battled it out using logic, scripture, and philosophical, prowess.
So it wasn't just about accepting the teachings of the people who came before you, but questioning, challenging, and refining them.
Exactly. It was this constant questioning, this debating that kept these philosophies alive and relevant. It forced them to evolve, to adapt to new challenges, new perspectives.
Like applying the scientific method to spirituality. You have a hypothesis, right?
Oh.
You test it, refine it, debate it with your peers.
That's a brilliant way to put it. This intellectual rigor is one of the reasons why Vedanta has stayed so vibrant, so influential for centuries. It's not afraid to ask those tough questions or engage in, lively, sometimes heated debate.
This has been such a trip. We started with this seemingly simple question: why does Vedanta have 3 different schools of thought? And look where we ended up on this incredible journey through history, culture, philosophy. We even had a little intellectual combat in there.
Yeah, and that's the magic of really going deep into a topic, You never know where it might lead you.
So true. So as we wrap this exploration up, what's the one thing our listeners should remember about the diversity of Vedanta?
I think the most important thing to take away is that this diversity, it's not a weakness, it's a strength. It's a testament to the richness, the adaptability of the Vedantic tradition. It tells us, there isn't one right path to truth. There are multiple pathways that cater to different needs, different perspectives.
It's like this vast, this vibrant ecosystem where each school of thought is contributing to the overall health, the vitality of the tradition.
Precisely. This diversity also reminds us that the spiritual journey, it isn't about blindly following, dogma. It's about this ongoing process, a process of inquiry, reflection, and even debate. It's about finding that path that resonates deeply with your own heart, your own mind.
Beautifully said. So for our listeners out there who are drawn to one of these schools, what's next for them? Should they just dive right in?
Oh, absolutely. Explore, read, learn, and most importantly, experience. See which path really, really calls to your soul. You might find one resonates more strongly than others, or you might find wisdom and beauty in all 3. The key is to keep an open mind and a curious heart.
Wise words.
Yeah.
And, I had this feeling this is just the beginning of our Vedanta exploration. There's still so much more to uncover: karma, dharma, the role of the guru, and all the practices associated with each school. It's this huge, fascinating world just waiting to be explored.
I couldn't agree more. And who knows, maybe our next deep dive will take us even deeper into this ancient, this ever-evolving tradition.
I'm already excited. Thanks so much for joining me on this fascinating journey. Until next time, keep those minds curious and those hearts open.